I have a very, very special guest today. She is, what should we say? If you are a parent and you've ever had to had to deal with money with your kids, this is your gal. Because talking to money sucks. Talk about money sucks. Talking about money with your kids sucks even more. So Rachel takes the suck out of talking about money. I'm super excited to hear about her. Her new book is I'm Not Your ATM, because I know as parents, we all feel like we're an ATM. So here we go. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, Max, for that
Of course.
interesting introduction.
Yeah, probably the best one you've heard all year. Come on, be honest
Yeah,
with
it
me.
has. It has been.
Anyway, so I figured the easiest way to go about this is just to go through the chapters, go one by one. There's little tidbits in every single one. They were all very, very interesting. You have a very unique story, to say the least. I really enjoyed it. You know, a lot of books I read and I review, and I think, oh my gosh, here we go. 401k, diversified index funds, all these boring things that we always hear about over and over and over again. So it was really interesting and fun to see a really, really new perspective. So anyway, I guess let's just dive in. Chapter 1, what happened to the fairy tale? What did happen to the fairy tale, Rachel?
Well, a lot of us, we're young and we think life's going to be great. We're going to get married and ride off on the horse and have a nice little house with a white picket fence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the truth for most people. According to the statistics, people's really struggle with money. And we were like most people. Our parents tried to teach us about money, but I don't think that they really knew how, because our parents' generation, they if they didn't have the money, they didn't spend it. And then our generation
Right.
came along and credit cards were a thing. So they knew to tell us credit cards are bad, but they really didn't know how to help us navigate that. And we started a business.
Recording in progress.
Uh,
We're good.
we started a business right after we got married, and it was a internet service provider. So
They
that was
had
back in
those
the
back in the
day.
day. Like you can make your own. Like your AT&T. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, we were like, it was AOL. I don't know if you remember AOL.
Yes, I for a very,
And
very brief
then
time.
we were like the local competition. And there was it was a huge amount of money back then for tech,
Yeah.
just for the minor tech stuff. And so we were not, my husband knows tech, but he didn't know business. And we weren't bringing in enough money, but rather than just call it quits, we said, well, maybe it'll get better next month. And so we kept financing it on our credit cards.
Right.
And
It's just we think
with,
things can be better. We have the optimistic side when we're doing the business because, like you said, good with the tech side, good with the operational side, but the business side
right,
is a whole different beast. That's for sure.
right, yeah. And so we ended up selling it, but at the end of the day, we were $50,000 in debt and no jobs,
Right.
no income.
Which is a scary place to be for anybody.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And but we went round and round about declaring bankruptcy, and every day was like a big topic of conversation. And one day we'd be like, oh, we're going to do it, and the next day we're like, no, maybe we shouldn't. And Keith had even made an appointment to go talk to the bankruptcy lawyer. But then we have this agreement in our marriage: if one of us doesn't feel right about whatever it is, then we don't do it. So I said,
It seems so interesting though because there are probably so many influences around you. It's like you're 50 grand in debt, which is a ton of money. Why are
yeah.
you going to think you're going to dig yourself out of this? Like just file bankruptcy and be done with it. So what in you created the wanting the get after it attitude? I guess is the
I
question.
don't I don't know. Maybe it's because I was always taught you make an agreement, you follow through with it. I don't know,
Right.
but I don't judge anybody that declares bankruptcy because I know
Right.
how stressful that was. But we just felt like we're supposed to pay it off, and a lot of people were telling us to declare bankruptcy. We went to a lot of different people for advice, like older people, and they're like, "Yeah, you need to declare," but we didn't do it. And it's kind of weird, but as soon as we decided, um, that was it. Like we didn't talk about it anymore.
There wasn't like we're going back and forth. Maybe we should do it for
No.
months and months and months and months or years for some people. You made a decision and you went for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the fairy tale. I guess the one thing I read in the book, that I read in that chapter was really interesting. You paid off your debt. It wasn't like we see these things on social media. I paid off $100,000 in 6.5 months, which is so mind-blowing. It's like, how do you make that much money, first off? You guys had more of a slow and steady debt payoff. It took you 5 years to pay it off. How was it? How would you encourage people who are on that debt payoff journey to stay in the weeds? Because it really does suck seeing all these people who are succeeding and having the social media lifestyle when it's not reality. How would you say to stay on the grind horse, more or less?
Right. Yeah, we were only making $29,000 a year.
Right,
That's why it took us so long to pay it off. And we drove, my car cost me $1,500.
Right.
It was a stick shift, which I didn't know how to drive, but I needed a car, so I taught myself how to drive that. We just pinched every penny we could. We sold everything we could. We house sat. You
just pretty much did the early 2000s equivalent of side hustles to get as much money as possible.
Yeah, there weren't side hustles back then, really. So yeah, we were just like, let's sell everything. Yeah, eBay was big back then, so we sold a lot of stuff on eBay.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the fairy tale. So things did not work out or pan out how you wanted, and this chapter really goes about, if you think you're going to have the knight in shining armor, if you think you're going to have the perfect everything, that's not reality. And I think once you hit adulthood, you realize that, unless you're really sheltered. And one of the things that made me start questioning in the first bit was, because it sounds like you guys were not very good with money into the marriage in the beginning. So I think a lot of people are going to question, how can I teach my kids to be good with money when I can't even manage my own money?
Right. Actually, I was really good with money, but my husband wasn't. And he'd tell you this. I'm not telling any secrets. We told all in the book.
Right.
How does anybody learn anything? Like, tell me something you're good at, Max.
Talking to people really fast.
But were you born that way?
No, of course. I worked at it. First off, I set a goal, and I said, I want to be this way. I want to be a more charismatic speaker. And I read books. I watched videos. I did it. I failed. I did it. I failed. I did it. And a little bit each and every day, each and every time, I improved. So that's how really you get good at anything.
Yeah. So none of us are born knowing how to do anything. We have to learn everything we know.
Right.
So if you're not good with money, do you want to stay that way?
But I think it's tough though, and I just to play devil's advocate, because my mother was this way, her mother was this way, my father was this way, his father was this way. Breaking that, I guess, generational curse takes someone really formidable. And when I see people like your story, it's super inspiring. Like, I look at my life, I'm like, wow, how can I apply some of those principles into my life? That's why I read so many books, like probably 2 a week, because there's so many good nuggets. Like, you guys did the slow and steady. Some people do it fast. There's always so many different things that we can learn from books, and your story also, that it's really inspiring. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I just think that you have to decide, like, do you want to change, or do you just want to use that excuse over and over that I'm not good with money? And there comes to
a pain point where you have so much pain. It's like, I'm either going to keep on doing this and be pain, or I'm going to choose the pain of changing and make something better.
Right. Yes. Because, you can use that excuse, but will it get you where you want to go? Not really.
Right. We want results, not excuses. I would always tell my coaching clients, we want results, not excuses.
And for us, our biggest problem was not our income problem. Our biggest problem was our mental problems. Like, we didn't believe we could. After we went through all those failures, we didn't believe we were capable of succeeding. Well, Keith drove a taxi for 5 years after that.
Yeah, that's gosh.
I think it was 5. It might have been longer.
Yeah, that's really crazy, because positivity begets negativity. Negativity begets negativity. And once we start, I think it's really interesting. Was there a certain point? You said when you were filing for bankruptcy, but was there any point where you just like, this is my stick? I'm drawing the line in the sand. This is where enough is enough. We're gonna make big changes.
It was gradual for us in everything, not just getting out of debt, but just our mindset.
Yeah.
Like, we would read a lot of books, listen to nowadays podcasts, but back then we didn't have that. A lot of reading books.
You went to the library and checked everything out, as the book talks about.
Yeah.
I like that.
Free.
I like that. Exactly. All right, chapter 2. Are you okay with average? What is average, Rachel, and how do we become better than average?
Average is being in a lot of debt.
Yeah.
They say that the only 39% of people can come up with $1,000 for an emergency.
So that means 61% cannot.
Cannot.
Do not have
Yes.
$1,000 if their engine blows tomorrow. That's
Yeah.
literally mind blowing to me.
And we can't like expect the government to always bail you out, you know? I mean, I know they've bailed out a lot of people with this stuff going on now,
Right.
but
Well, we
what if
can
they
bail it out,
can't?
but how much longer can it take? My
Yeah.
kids, your kids, their kids. How long is it going to last? And once you give this more or less free money, what's the incentive to go back to hard labor? I mean,
Right.
not hard labor, but most people don't work a labor job.
It's like
But go back to
prison
work,
camp.
right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just don't want to be dependent on other people. I want to be able to provide for myself. And a lot of people, like my whole generation, when I was getting ready to write this book, I just went around and talked to a lot of people of my age who are parents of teenagers, and said, who taught you about money? And most of them said nobody. I just had to figure it out. And that could be a really expensive lesson.
Can be a
know?
lifelong of expensive lessons.
They're getting student loans, and no one warns them what that means. The average college graduate has 29,000 in student loans.
Right. I was just talking about this with a friend of mine. Do you know there's one loan that you can be 18 years old and they do almost no check on how you can repay it in the future, yet they give it to you so freely? Student loans.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
else, there's a background. There's credit check, there's history and all that business. But in the student loans, there's not really much of that. And to me, that really is mind blowing.
And then that cannot be discharged in a bankruptcy.
How about that
So
for
you're-
servitude?
You're enslaved for. Yeah, I know people that are paying it for like 20, 30 years, 500 a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You better get a good job if that's what you're doing.
Amen to
But a lot of people
that.
aren't. They're not having they're not high income earners.
Well,
but-
most people my generation, 30 to 35, they have student loan debt and they work at Starbucks, which is nothing against working at Starbucks, but you're making $12 an hour and you have 60 grand in debt. That math does not
Yeah.
work out.
yeah.
So not all doom and gloom though. What is chapter 3? A hidden secret. Are you gonna talk about the secret? I want to hear about the secret. Let's hear about it.
Yeah. Well, I tell this story in the book about how we decided to do this family project. We decided to build a log cabin. We had no construction experience other than a 2-day class that we took.
So you guys
And
were
we
gonna
came
build a
home.
house with 2 days of experience. You are absolutely
Yeah.
crazy.
And it wasn't even outside experience. It was sitting in a table in a classroom because they were just talking to us.
Wow.
So we didn't even no hands-on. So we went home and we figured it out. We YouTubed, we went into forums and said, what do you do when this happens?
Yeah.
And we know that was a lot of the mind shift for us too, was because we realized that, even though you can't get something right, that doesn't mean you're a failure. Like, figure it out another way.
Right. I forget to say
Nobody-
Marie Folio. She says everything is figure outable.
Yes,
Everything.
I love that. I love that phrase. Yeah, because you back yourself into a corner, and nobody buys half-built log homes. You better,
Right.
you better
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
And so that really taught us a lot. Like after we went through that, it's like we're not too scared of failing, But we noticed that our kids acted different. Like people would make comments about how our kids were different than other kids, and I was just like, yeah, that's just because they're farm kids.
In what way though? What were they saying that was different about them?
They act more mature. They are more confident. They know how to do things. And then we started teaching life and leadership skills to teens, and we started our podcast.
Right.
And we named it Raising Confident Teens. And then shortly after we started, I heard Brandon Burchard speaking. He's a high performance coach.
Just finished his book.
Yes.
High Performance Habits. Yep. Good book.
Yeah. He talks about this thing called the confidence competence loop, which I had never heard before. And he says, the more competent you become, so the more skills you learn, the better you get at anything, the more confident you become. And then if you become more confident, you're more willing to try new things. So then you become more competent, and it just builds on itself.
Right.
It's kind of like learning how to drive a car. The first time you get in there, you're all scared and nervous and everything you have to think about. But then, you know, you've been driving 20 years. You just hop in and take off. You
Right.
don't think, which foot's the brake? Which foot's,
or that first time you were on the freeway, the nerve-wracking time being,
Yes.
yeah, all that.
Yeah. Yeah. But you don't start out on the freeway, hopefully. You know, you just slowly build up your competence by...
Yes, I think that's really profound because no one's, like we were just saying before, how do I become good at speaking with people really quickly? Well, because I do it for hours every single day. It's not because I came out of the womb being a great orator. That's not how anybody works. You didn't come out of the womb great with money or being able to teach teens that way. You worked at it, and I think that's something we've lost a lot in this culture. It's the I am fill in the blank, therefore I deserve this or I'm entitled to this, and we're entitled to nothing. We're entitled to things we earn, and I think that's even like there's a lot of four-letter words I like to use, you know, love and all those nice ones, and some other four-letter words that probably aren't very appropriate. But my favorite one is earn, because everything you earn, it just. I remember the first car I actually bought, not my parents' car, but the car I bought. I earned that with the money I saved up, and let me tell you, I took care of that a hell of a lot better than I took care of my parents' car. Because I earned it, and I think that's really kind of what the whole thing is here. Like you create these confident young people because you teach them that life is not given to you on a silver platter. You must earn it, as opposed to just having like I have this last name, therefore I get this, or I'm this person's son, or whatever. That entitlement I think is really pervasive, and we have to fight against that because if not, you're gonna have a teen turn into an adult. They're gonna be 30 years old, entitled to stuff. A 30-year-old entitled person is not fun to be around. All right, if you fail to plan, well, you know the rest. And you're talking with people, why do you suppose it's so, I don't know, in vogue? Just so, I guess, average to not plan the finances. We plan our wedding. We plan the honeymoon. We plan our family vacations. We plan our 401ks. Well, I guess some people do. We actually have our employer plan that. Why is it so hard, or why do people fail so much in planning their, I guess, financial life?
You know, I think that our parents' generation, they were just like very private about that kind of stuff.
Right.
They
didn't talk about it
at all. And that you could get by with that without credit, you know, because you can't get into trouble if no one lends you money.
Right.
It just exploded when credit cards came on the scene and nobody knew how to handle it. It's kind of our culture too. Think about it. Nobody talks about their salary. I think more people should talk about their salaries to each other, because then they might realize
they need to go ask for a raise.
Yeah, I think it's almost like the companies try to keep you from talking about, because then they'd have to pay people more, because people would find out what other people were making.
Good point.
It's kind of like almost an unspoken rule. We don't talk about money.
Why is it taboo though? That's the question. Why is it so taboo for us to talk about money specifically? People talk about sex like it's no big deal. Religion, politics, that comes to people's mouth, no big deal. When it comes to money, people are very tight-lipped. Why do you suppose that is?
I think it's because a lot of people weren't taught about money, and so they feel uncomfortable because they don't understand it, and they don't want to expose themselves
as being not competent, as we talked about previously.
Right, because everybody else looks like they have it all together.
Right.
You know, everybody else has a nice car, nice house, and I'm struggling over here.
Credit. Yep.
Yeah, but I don't want to go ask anybody for help, because that would make me look bad. It's like, who do I ask for help? My parents didn't teach me, so I don't know that I should ask them. Parents
didn't teach me. School didn't teach me. Who was going to teach?
Right.
That's the tough part.
Yeah.
Keeps us employed though. I kind of like that. Yes. So if you fail to plan, so people are so tight with money. Our parents didn't teach us. School didn't teach us. That's why we have to break so many barriers, because this really is probably the most taboo subject. Coworkers don't even talk about money. You know, they're making probably around the same amount of money, yet they don't talk about it. It's very, very odd. And even in families, I mean, that's the most intimate unit we have is the family unit. And if we can't talk about money there, where can we talk about it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, chapter 5, the money plan. I guess this is the chapter that really kind of lays everything out. The first 4 chapters lay out your backstory, the hidden secret, and then this really dives in. And before we get there, I want to ask a question. You encourage giving the budget power to the teens.
Right.
I remember at the beginning of each month. So in the book, you gave an example of a teen managing the money for eating out for the month. Maybe you can talk about that and share how that could be implemented for people.
Yeah. So what we do with our kids when they get to be about 5th or 6th grade, we start turning over parts of the budget that are related to them so that they'd be interested in it, and we start out really, really small. So when they first start out, they're not doing anything that's going to cause a lot of stress if they blow it.
Right.
It
You're not
could
giving
be
them
like,
no mortgage money for the 6th grader.
yeah. It could be like, say your family goes and gets ices every week at the gas station. We'll give them the money once a month at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then let them work. If they blow it, then, oh, I'm sorry, no icy for you. But it's not like you're $5,000 in credit card debt.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
And then every year we add more categories to our kids' salary and we give them more salary. So the 3 kids that are teens now at our house, they all get a monthly salary, and like we go out to eat once a week and they always have to pay their own food.
I loved reading in the book that the kids figured out very quickly how expensive soda is, and they started drinking water. I started laughing about that, how they figured out, $2.50 a pop on soda. That's not that. Times it by 4 or 5 people. There's $10-15 right there. I thought that was really interesting because kids, we don't do math. Kids. The next chapter is about the loopholes. We don't do the math. We don't. They don't count the cost. And once you mess up one time and you can't have the icy like in your example, guess what? They're gonna make sure they get the icy next month because they really want the icy. Yeah. And there's those real world consequences I think are really important because life is that's gonna happen in life whether you like it or not. And I think it's good in that safe, more insulated environment to happen as opposed to the first time that happening is outside the house.
Yeah. As a parent, I always felt guilty because we have 5 kids, and when I would have to give we're all having water speech, I would feel so guilty. But now I don't care because I'm not the one. They're paying their own.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good plan. I like that.
It rewards them for saving. Like if you're a teenager and your parents take you clothes shopping and you find a deal on clothes, you don't get the benefit of that. Your parents do.
That's a good point.
But if you give them a monthly salary that includes they have to buy their own clothes and they find deals, they get to pocket the difference,
Yeah. So it's at an early age teaching them how to live frugally even from the get-go.
Right.
That's pretty cool. I wish my parents would have done that. I remember I was in my dad's car. We were driving to my driving test, and he was even tougher. He said, "All right, how much money do you have in your wallet?" I just started a job 2 weeks previous, my first job working in a restaurant, and I had one $10 bill in my wallet. He said, "All right, the gas tank's empty. Go put $10 in." It was the last $10 I had. And I passed my driving test, thankfully. But that really taught me, we can't just go blow the money on whatever we want. Of course, we've all done our bad things with money, but it really taught me, I don't have any money left. I need to go back to work and make it happen, or I need to fill up this gas tank. And I think those real world consequences, especially like 6th grade, like this is to be honest, this is foreign. Sixth graders don't talk about money. They talk about running around. So it's a good thing because money is something that stays with us forever. Everyone has to deal with it. Everyone has their part of it, and I think implementing that is really helpful, especially for the young ones. So you've implemented with your kids. Your oldest one is out of the house now. You said he just moved out?
He's 24.
24.
He's 24.
So
My second one just moved out.
Second one just moved out. So what have you seen compared to their peers compared to how they deal with money? Have the older ones become super savers and really frugal, or have they fallen off since they become more or less adults?
The oldest one, he puts a pretty big chunk into a Roth every month.
Nice.
The second one just moved out, but she always, when we talk to her about this, she's like, "I'm definitely doing this with my kids."
Yeah, nice.
It is such a good experience because teenagers love control.
Yeah,
they want to be in control of stuff.
Right.
And nobody wants to go ask mom for money. Like that seems like, can I have some money? Like in front of all your friends.
Right. It's embarrassing.
But whipping out that wallet as a 13, 14-year-old,
It's on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
One quote in this chapter really stuck out to me. It said, "Let them see that you trust them." I thought that was really good because as kids, a lot of times kids don't get any trust from their parents. We have the helicopter mothers, helicopter parents who have such a tight grip over their life. It's really good to give them a little bit of responsibility because again, life is going to hit them with responsibility, and adulthood it's good to start them early. And the note I wrote here is the question for you is: so what if the teen or the kid doesn't do well with money? Let's take the icy for example. What do you do as a parent? What kind of conversation do you have with them if they blow it all on the wrong thing and they can't have the icy?
Right. Well, part of it is, the thing about this plan is it is tailored to you. Like, it's not like every family's going to be the same because different kids have different maturity levels. And some kids will be more mature younger, and some kids you might have to say, we're going to wait to start this with you.
Right.
You know your kid. And it's not like a race to see how quickly I can get through it. Like if you start 3 years later than I suggest starting, you're still going to be way ahead.
Yeah.
Of every other kid out there. But if you have a kid that, you take it you can take it pretty seriously before you even start and have a major, make it a big deal. Like, we're going to start releasing this to you. This is a big, step in your development. You can make it
right
a ceremony if you want. But then, you gotta lay down the ground rules because teenagers will twist and say, well, you didn't say that, so you need to think through. In the chapter,
as I say, move on to the next chapter, chapter 6, because all teens look for loopholes. What loopholes do they find? Or they probably didn't find any loopholes with you, right?
Well, they did, because that's why I wrote the book, because I'm like, I didn't think of all these things before I did it. I actually read another book that gave me the idea for all of this, but she didn't go into too great a detail. So I'm like, I need to write a book for the people that just need worksheets and stuff.
Yeah, actionable
already
stuff.
thought through. Yeah, actual steps. They'll be like, well, I try to give grace. Like, if there's something that comes up that is not normal and it's not in the budget, I don't say, sorry, you can't have any money for that.
Right.
Like, it was something I would have bought anyway.
Right. So again, the book's more about tailoring it to your specific situation, because there's some good platitudes and good principles to follow. But you're saying you're not gonna ding them for something that they have no control over, because that's life sometimes.
Right. Yeah, but if they keep blowing the money, I would either say, maybe we need to take a step back and you have to ask mom and dad from now on for money, and you don't get to control it, or just keep them at that level and don't give them any more responsibility.
Got it.
But you have to be able to tell your kid, I'm sorry, did you blow all your money? And not give them more money. I know a lot of parents can't do that because they feel so bad. But you have to remember that they're going to get out there in life and they're going to have a boss. And if they spend all their salary and are out, they cannot go to that boss and say, I saw this really cute shirt and I need, I ran out of money. Their boss is not going to say, I'm so sorry.
The boss is going to, right. The boss will say, wait till the 1st and 15th.
Yes. Yes. So, remember you're growing an adult, not, you want them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet when they get out on their own.
Jordan Peterson, who's an author I really admire, he says, what we should do to kids is teach them to be as functional an adult as possible. If you've done that, you've succeeded as a parent.
Yeah.
Because adult children, and I've dealt with lots of them, oh boy, they're not fun for anybody.
Yeah, and a lot of I feel like our school system is kind of set up like that. Like, we focus on the minors and we forget the majors.
Right. Not everyone's going to do chemistry, but everyone's going to have a budget, or lack thereof, and be in financial ruin.
Right.
So chemistry was fun, right? Challenges and changes. What challenges come up? What are the most common challenges that came up, and the changes you implement?
I'm trying to think. For us, it was just like, I was flying by the seat of my pants on doing it with my own kids.
Right.
So like
They were the test dummies, the guinea pigs.
yeah, I call them my experimental models, especially my oldest. You're the experimental model. I'm so sorry. I hope your therapy bill is not too high. Um, it's just parenting is a challenge unto itself. Like every part of it is like every stage. You're like, man, this stage is hard, and then you get to the next stage. This stage is hard. It,
Right.
and every kid is different. You got to learn how to work with all the different person. Every single one of my kids handles money different.
Yeah.
And so it's just learning how to teach your kids the best way for them, And
What was really nice in the book is you had a bunch of like little graphs and handouts and things to actually fill out, which I think are somewhere on your website. I'll link to the website below on all the guides and such. But I think that was really helpful because there's all the different categories. Like you don't have to think about every single category that's part of the budget. You can start them when they're young, these categories, and then when they're older they go to the other categories. So I thought that was really helpful and really actionable.
I think a lot of parents don't realize how much money they really do spend on their kids. It just comes out little by little. You spend thousands of dollars a year on your kids.
Might as
Why
well
not funnel it through them? Let them handle it.
And if they don't handle it well, like you're saying, you take a step back, keep keep the level where you are, and tailor it to each kid because I think that's really important. It's good to keep in mind. All right, last but not least, you have created perfect adults or perfect soon-to-be adults as kids. You're gonna let them fly.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, earlier, you have to learn to trust your kids. Like you got to teach them what they need to know. And you're not going to remember everything you should teach them, but I think if you do the best you can, it will work out,
And it's good though because now they have this resource with your book and they can start officially say I am not your ATM because I think parents I remember my parents when they were younger, they were the perpetual ATM and we never were taught that money doesn't grow on trees. My dad was working his patootie off, 10 hours a day. I didn't see any of that. He was always gone. So it's good to begin implementing things that make your kids into adults as opposed to them being kids forever.
I think the only way a lot of parents know how to teach their kids about money is to lecture them. And to a teenager, that sounds like the Charlie Brown's mom.
You should do this. You should do that.
Wow. Because it's theoretical. If you just tell your kids you need to save some money, like what does that mean? But if you were to show them, hey, look what happens if you put $100 into this 401k, what will happen,
Right.
Or what will happen if you buy this computer on credit?
Yeah.
How long is it going to take you to pay that off? And how many years and how much will you really spend in interest? I think that they would be more willing to learn if we didn't make it so lecture-y and theoretical that they can't relate. Like I'm sure your parents might have probably said to you, we work hard for our money, when you were a kid.
Sure.
But you didn't really know what they wanted you to do. What does that mean? What am I supposed to do with that?
Right. Yeah. There's no actionable steps. There's that you should do this, you should do that. And
right.
that pointing finger doesn't really do much when it comes to kids.
Yeah,
they want to actually do stuff.
You're not appreciating all our hard work, or we spend a lot of money on you,
Right. So we need to back up the talking also with the actions, and that's the piece that's missing. And this book is full of actionable stuff on how to actually go about it. Because talking about it is great, but actually doing it, like you said, how do we become good at something? We do it over and over and over again. Stumble, fall, stand back up. It's like a kid learning how to walk. They crawl for a little bit. They stumble about 3 million times, and eventually they get their balance and they start walking. It's the same thing with this, and I think it's really good that you now have this resource for people to go to, and I'm just excited by it.
Think about when you first moved out on your own, and you didn't know how to budget, you didn't know how to reconcile, you didn't know how to do any of that. So, like, what if your parents had started doing that with you, ninth grade, 8th grade, every month, here's your salary. And it may not be the same every month because you may have a job. So, you kind of need to figure that out. Nowadays they got apps. Like you can just do it all on the app, put it in the different categories.
Yeah, the technology side really is good.
Okay, it's the end of the month. Let's reconcile it. How'd you do? if you start it, say you got 3 or 4 categories you're dealing with, and you only have to reconcile that much. Think about it as an adult, like how many debits and
Right.
credits
The
you
300
know
items I have to do every single month.
how overwhelming that is. But what if you only had to do 4?
Yeah.
3 or 4. Um, and then you can ask questions. Hey, what does this mean? Like when you're an adult and you're trying to figure it out, you don't really ask questions. You just don't do it.
Exactly. You don't do it.
And I think it took me years and years and years to understand that it's not like the perfect budget from heaven. Ooh. Like, we spend hours and hours making out this budget, and we think it's supposed to be the same every month. No, it's not.
Right.
It should be different every month. What are you going to do this month that you're not doing normal? But if kids don't learn that, they feel, if someone doesn't learn that a budget is a flexible, changing thing, they're going to feel like a failure
Right.
because they didn't do it right.
Yeah, totally. Well, and you were saying that even throughout the process, you give the kids grace because they're learning just like you had previously, and I think that's a really
Right.
important aspect because it's way better to give grace over the Slurpee compared
Right.
to missing your car payment or your rent
Yeah.
payment. Those are the big things you don't want to miss out, and that's a very good point there.
Yeah.
I'm Not Your ATM, Rachel Murphy. I will put the link in the description. Thank you so much for having a good time. I know we've talked a few times, and I'm really looking forward to the book launching. And do you have any last words? I'll put your links and all that good stuff on the description below. But what final words for our friends?
Yeah. I say not only give your kids grace, but give yourself grace. I mean, we're all learning. You're not going to be an expert. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Even with I think your kids will give you more grace if they know you're trying, and you act like a human and not act like some perfect person.
Definitely. No one's perfect.
Yeah. They know you're not perfect. Don't try to act like you are. Just say we're learning as we go, but we want to help you become better. Um, they'll appreciate it more, I think.
Awesome. Very good. All right, Rachel, thank you very much. I will see you guys on the next one. Bye for now.
All right, thanks.